Now I want you to say a few words about wrestling and life and a little introspective.
I guess most important thing in a wrestling match is to score the next point. How's that?
You've always said that. And I was in the room at the OTC when you were saying your goodbye. Trent Paulson was there and Travis Paulson were there, and I remember it was a pretty sentimental moment, and it hit me that you were retiring, quasi-retiring. What has your life been like since?
Life after wrestling in most cases tends to include a little more wrestling. I'm still involved. I still do some work for the Hall of Fame. I still do an occasional camp and clinic, and I've had the opportunity to work a little bit in the college room since, so I've still been involved. I'm trying to put together, I've got a new idea for a instructional book. I'm trying to put that together, and I still follow it, still stay in touch with some of the guys and the athletes, and it's been enjoyable. I've got a wife that's been very supportive through the whole thing, which is really important. Without her support, it couldn't be done, and I'm appreciative of it.
Mm-hmm. Now, Doc, what has wrestling, I know it's been pretty much your whole life, but why is it worth it to be involved in lifestyle?
It's not for everybody. It's kind of demanding. It's almost selfish. It almost takes your life over in a lot of ways, and so why it drives one person and doesn't drive another, I don't know. But I know that if it weren't for wrestling, I don't know that I'd be who I am. I certainly know I wouldn't be where I am because of the fact that I never applied for a coaching job in my life. I went in and helped the high school team, and the next thing you know, they're offering me a head job. I went to work with USA Wrestling, and I never applied for the national developmental job, and they offered it to me, and it's just kind of, I really feel the good Lord put me where He thought I'd work best. I really think that God gave me, we all have God-given talents. I think mine was the ability to be able to work with developmental athletes, and I loved it. If I had the choice between being an elite national senior level coach only, I wouldn't do it. I really like the cadet, the junior, the university age levels, working with college kids, high school kids. I really think the developmental years are significant, and I think where you can make a big difference. They've got a more open mind. Mine's like a parachute; it doesn't work unless it's open. And
yes.
I think sometimes they get at that elite senior level. They got out of college, they started that. They get more and more fixed in what they do. Whereas these younger kids coming up, even at college age, you can still form them. You can still make fundamental changes that'll make a difference. And it's all about fundamental skills. It's all about fundamentals development, and it's all about self-belief. And I think if you can get those things into them, it's going to be a great experience. And the important thing is the experience. If they leave the sport feeling that it's been a worthwhile thing and a valuable thing for their life, it's been a good thing. If not, it's not just about winning. The medals fade, but the experience doesn't. And I think that's important.
You said a lot of great things right there. One thing comes to mind real quick is that you've seen wrestling from the beginning all the way to the Olympic Games, and I was in Rio this year with my own child to expose her to that. She's only 11 years old now, only, right? and growing up way too fast. For families, knowing that wrestling is one of the largest first-generation sports where people never wrestled before they come into the sport, and a lot of parents that support their kids because they love them, they don't know what to do with wrestling. They don't know that they're going in the wrong places or pushing way too hard. You have seen the gamut. What suggestion would you have to a parent of a child that loves the sport and has opportunity to grow through the sport instead of fade away?
I think the most important thing is to be a parent first. That child needs a parent. They need a mother, they need a father, far more than they need a coach. And if you're the mother or you're the father, I think you need to take that role and put it in the front. That needs to be the first role. And I think I could tell a little story that I think really brought it home to me is when my youngest son was wrestling in high school and I was his coach, I grabbed him after a meet one day and I said, "You and I have to talk." And he looked up at me and he said, "Well, who am I talking to?" Am I talking to my coach or my dad? And I says, you're talking to your coach. He said, well, right now I can use my dad, so let me know when you find him. And I really think that we have to be able to separate those roles if we're going to work with our kids in wrestling, or we have to be smart enough to let somebody else take over and handle that part of it and just be dad. And I think that's the toughest thing for parents to do. And I think the other thing that we tend to forget is, unlike any other sport, wrestling is a roller coaster ride. The highs are so high you can't imagine it, and the lows are so low a pregnant ant couldn't crawl under it. And it's like this, and you have to be able to cope and deal with that, not only as a parent, but as an athlete. You know, success is built on failure, and parents need to understand that there's a lot of life in front of that child, there's a lot of experience in front of that child, and it's not going to all be roses. So you'd better be able to support them and build them up in the times when they're down, and not tear them down when they're down, because they won't get back up if you do.
Wow, thank you. That was beautiful. Now, Larry.
No.
Larry, come on.
I'm not.
You're the head coach here. I just want to ask you about this man right here. He says no. I've never been turned down on a question.
That's why
I don't want you to talk about you or your program. I want you to talk. It's just how important has this man been in your life? How important has this man been to you in your life?
What?
This man right here. How important has he been in
you? You just are so good at what you do. You won't let me get out of this.
Why do you think I didn't want to get on your TV show?
Okay.
I would have taken it over. It was the Larry Nugent show. No, you, Larry Nugent, and just say who you are, head coach, Bethany College, and then you've got this great friend of wrestling right here. And what has he meant to you? What has he meant to the sport? Anything else that comes along, go for it.
Well, we were talking earlier, it's pretty simple. If you can leave any part of your involvement with the sport and say that you benefited it, it's better having you been involved in it, then you've done justice to what you're trying to do. And that's, when I look at Doc B, I had so much fun. I mean, the first thing is that whatever we did, it was fun. It was hard work. Sometimes days and days. Dave would wear the same clothes 3 days in a row when he was working on editing. I remember coming to him and saying the next day, Dave, you're wearing the same clothes you wore yesterday. It's because he didn't go to sleep, because he had deadlines. And anyway, the point is I learned a lot of things from Dave. I learned hard work, but I learned that even though you may be going on the real highs and the real lows, you got to have some fun while you're doing it, and we did.
Okay. And I just want to say that we're meeting here by chance, God's providence. I'm coming from one state to another state. We're in the middle state, and this gentleman right here is the head coach at Bethany College. But he also gave me a message this morning. He said one of his boys qualified for the national tournament, and he's been a supporter of the mental work, the Champion by Design work. And
That's right.
Can you talk a little bit about
That's right.
where you're at with that conversation right now? I mean, just who is this kid and what happened?
Well, Quentin Harrison was a talented kid who in the middle of his career in college, his coach left, and a lot of the quality athletes left as well, and it took the passion out of the sport for him, I think, and it knocked him down a little bit, and his goal setting and his expectations were not being reset. They just weren't being reset. No matter what I did, it wasn't really making an effect, and so I leaned on your program, because I know the benefits of making sure you condition your mind for success and all those things that Champion by Design does. And so I hooked Quentin up with you, and he got into your program, and guy qualified for the national tournament this last week. He wasn't seeded. He wasn't even seated in the top 5. I mean, he wasn't seeded. He was just thrown into the bracket. And I knew in the 3rd round that he had to win. It was a very close match in my mind. I'm not exaggerating this. I knew he was going to win because he had done the work. He'd done the physical work for me, but he'd done the mental work for himself. I knew he was going to win that match, and so I'd like to know a little bit more about the backstory, because I stayed out of it. I let you guys work together on it. And
I love that you did that so that you can do an honest evaluation as clean as possible. and I'm curious too with the feedback. Now, this work on the mind. Everybody always says mind is so important. I believe there's two sides of it, or three sides of it: physical, emotional, mental, right? Or technical, physical, and mental. And you have to be firing off on all 8 cylinders on each one. It's not one is better than the other. Try to be in balance. Larry Gibson comes up again and again, who you know, Doc Bennett, and is there a story about him? Is there a story that you can share real quick, a principle about conditioning the mind for success? Because I'm just a young guy that's bringing this stuff to the forefront more than others have in the past, and I feel honored that I'm on your guys' shoulders who really were doing this years ago and figuring it out. And what about Larry Gibson? Because that's how I got started.
Larry is a unique individual, because Larry has not only been a great coach and a great mentor and a great sports psychologist from the standpoint of being able to mentor athletes from the standpoint of mental stability and mental growth, but he had to overcome a lot to do that. He lost his leg. He's missing one leg, and so he's done all this. He wrestled in college with one leg, and he's overcome a lot of personal and physical handicaps to get where he's at, but he is the most positive, uplifting person you could possibly be around, and it's contagious. And when Larry talks to you, he talks to you with the kind of conviction that you believe what he's saying and you buy into it.
My name is Larry Gibson. I live in the state of Washington, and I've been a teacher for quite a while, and life has not been always easy for me, but it's something that I've tried to live well, and I'm not done yet, so don't be, But I also have learned some things about life, things that are powerful, other things. When I lost my leg, I didn't lose it. It was a drunk driver hit me, and they had to cut it off. But when I went to college or high school, I wanted to play football, so I did. Wasn't great when I started, but I played football, and it was good. And we had a big program. There was a huge high school that I went to down in Portland. And then I wrestled down there, and I used to run on my metal crutches. After practice was over, I'd probably run 2 or 3 miles on my crutches. And then I started thinking about getting better. Well, what does that mean? And as life went on, I went to college and got degrees, and I have a degree in psychology, and I have a degree in history, and I have this and that. But nothing really put a finger on who I am. But I started learning about self-image and performance, and that what you tell yourself becomes your truth. Well, that's true. But then I also realized, it's not just that. Day to day, what you tell yourself becomes your truth too. It becomes your truth about things you want to do. And be careful about saying, I don't think I could do that, because you know what? You'd be right. What do you tell yourself that you don't think you could do? You don't have a chance in the world to do it. So you better change the words you use. I am, I always. It's not I want to. It's like I am, I always. So change the words like they've already happened.
And Larry, this philosophy, this Larry Gibson philosophy, I'm going to call it what it is, because
that's what it
through
is.
our exchange today, it's completely obvious and evident that you are an original.
I am. It's true. I don't know anybody like me. It's
okay.
kind of scary.
So your positivity and your unique view of performance, of high performance, and teaching high performance.
Yes, that's true. Mm-hmm.
You wrestled and had success in wrestling. You are in several halls of fame.
Yes, I am.
What are some of the halls of fame that have recognized you for your extraordinary life?
Well, certainly USA Wrestling has been huge. I'm in the National Wrestling Hall of Fame. I'm a gold level coach. I was one of the first ones that ever got it.
The first or the second?
Probably the second. The first might have been Dan Gable. I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah. What would you guess? I don't know.
Yeah.
Gold coach and all that. And
There's only a few gold coaches in the world.
That's true. When
You're one of the first, weren't you?
Yes. And when I go to the Nationals and I'm registering as a coach, They want your card, so I just pull my card. It says Gold Coast, and they said, I've not seen one of these before very much. And I said, well, there's not very many of them, but it makes me feel good, you know. Yeah, it's never too late to live happily ever after.
How important, in your opinion, coming from someone such as yourself with the experience and the life that you've had, how important is it to educate and empower and teach positive self-talk, positive affirmation to parents, their coaches, and their athletes in training?
You know, that's an interesting question, because the things I've already talked about that I assume you have recorded, and I really hope you do, they're powerful, and they make a life the way life should be, and it is extremely powerful. And I want others to know that, and it's not a secret. When we're little children and we do something wrong, our parents try to correct us. They say, bad boy, bad girl. What are you thinking? You're not good enough for you. You can't, you won't, you never. That's what they tell you. Not realizing the extreme damage that can happen from that conversation. And you as a little kid has never had anybody like a parent before or a coach before that uses negative words like that. My gosh. And so it's crucial, you know, so powerful and so important that we learn to talk differently to ourselves. And I guess that's what I'm talking about now. And that's the lesson that I really like to teach for a lifetime. This is a lesson of lifetime, not a lifetime for now. It's a lesson that'll change your family's life, your children's life, your parents' life, other people's lives around you. Wherever you go, it'll make a difference forever. That's a long time. And it's so powerful that if you learn and you pass it on.
We're both a little bit of the old school, and you have to deal, when you deal with the mind, you're dealing with two different minds. You've got a conscious mind and a subconscious mind, and you better take both into consideration or you're going to have issues. And I think Larry understood that and knew how to deal with it, knew how to approach the kids. He did a great job. He still does a great job.
That's fantastic. And anything else you'd like to wrap up with? This is it. This is a record. This is an artifact right here. Since I have you right here, any thoughts on the situation between Iran and the U.S. that opened up and allowed the U.S. to go and compete? How important is wrestling? How significant is it as a diplomatic effort to promote world peace through friendship and sport?
I think it's real significant, and I think that's why it opened up. I think both governments in the end realized that it's been one avenue of communication that's been open and stayed open through all of the crises and all of the political problems. And I think when push comes to shove, both governments realized they didn't want this door closed, and I think that's why it opened, and I think that's why they got it done. And it is a good thing. I mean, Iran is the USSR of the past. I mean, you know, there's nothing. You grew up wanting to beat a Russian, now you grew up wanting to beat an Iranian, and vice versa. And I think the competition between the states and Iran in wrestling is phenomenal, just like it has been with the other countries. And I think that door needs to stay open.
Henry Cejudo, you created the mold to recruit his brother Angel and Henry, bring him out to the OTC while basically Henry was still in high school. Big pioneering effort, ripples across the country for the United States. Do you have any thoughts looking back at that whole experience that you'd like to share?
I would have to write a book.
Well, we will maybe, but
Henry was something that was, you know, I spent the entire time working with Henry, and you know, he started out with his coaches were Sergey and myself, and then Sergey left, and Brands came into the picture as Terry and I, and we truly worked with him together, and it was like raising a youngster as well as coaching one, because he didn't have a dad here, and trying to get him through high school and trying to keep him on track and trying to get him where he wanted to go. It went much beyond just the wrestling, but there are a lot of Henry stories, but Henry was determined. He was dedicated to what he wanted to do. He knew what he wanted to do, and he wanted those goals. That he was willing to do the work and pay the price, and he did. And on a lot of times you can pay that price, and that doesn't mean you're going to get the result. The success is truly in the journey. It's not in the medal. It's not in standing atop that award stand. And Henry was able to share in both. He not only had the journey, but he managed to get to the top of that podium. And I think it was a great thing for him, and it was a great thing for the Hispanics, and I think it's been a good thing for wrestling.
I had a conversation with Les Gutches a couple months ago, and the idea came up about bringing young kids in, following a similar path as Henry. When you saw this, what made sense to you? Because you fought, you lobbied to make this possible. Nobody had ever done it. What made sense, and why did you fight so hard?
Well, it's a long story.
I know you got 30 seconds.
Yeah, it's a long story, but Henry wasn't the first one. We were bringing kids in every year. We'd bring in one or two every year. We had Luke Smith and Matt Stopinski, and and Matt went on to be the two-time All-American for Navy, and Luke went to Wisconsin. We had Jack Jensen went to Oklahoma State. We had laid out a strategy where we would begin to continue to do this, and I think they're starting to go back to look at that again now.
Yes.
But it's nothing new. It's something we had in mind all along.
Yes. And for the right families, because I get to reach out to a lot of people all over the country, for the right profile, right family, parents questioning whether this is even a viable option. Is it?
It is. It's a real viable option for the right family, the right parents, the right kids. But there's really a big factor here that you have to be. You're taking these youngsters and you're putting them in an environment where you have adults. Most of the resident athletes at this training center are not youngsters; they're adults. And you have to be able to truly define the association to where the association doesn't go beyond the wrestling room, to where they don't pick up habits and things they shouldn't pick up. There has to be a very strong mentoring and supervisional program to whereby they're still kids. They're still being molded. They're still being formed, turning into the adult they're going to be. And it's really important to get the right guidance. Bobby Douglas, years ago, I've known Bobby forever, but years and years ago, and I want to say it may go back, maybe in the 80s, we were having a conversation. I used a quote one time, but Bobby told me as a coach he could think of nothing more valuable as a coach for his athletes to do than to grow up to become a decent citizen that would be of value to society. And I really think that's our goal as coaches. It isn't just to turn out champions. It's to turn out individuals that will be of value to society and a moral example that the people can look to. I think that's it.
That is wonderful. Thank you so much. And here we are with a living legend, two living legends. He's so humble here.
Yeah, I got you a t-shirt.
Thank you. Thank you.
T-shirt. They're wrong time of year though, so it's not large, they're extra large.
Living legend, Doc Bennett, Larry Nugent, Georgia, behind the scenes there, making sure we all look good. It's been a wonderful life. Thank you both for being a part of my life.
You betcha.
I've met this guy years ago when I was just out of high school, and been able to, this is what wrestling does. It is a culture, it is a lifestyle, it is a family, it is a big fraternity. And it's not perfect, but I sure am grateful that I started wrestling at 13. And 30 years later, still involved. Thank you guys.